friends, have you ever been in a moving tank? We are currently with the 155th Brigade near Pokrovsk, which was partially formed in France. And behind me, you recognize they have had Caesars. We have already made a first video, but this is a tank. Leopard 204, what does that mean? That means you have a big cannon and a German engine, and that works well. The Caesar cannons and drone operators, their first ambition is to make sure that the infantry, the men who hold the trench, he is never to endure the assaults and be in contact with the Russian attacks. However, if ever, the Russian infantry and Russian vehicles, even if there are fewer and fewer vehicles, they reach the level of the Ukrainian infantry. They are going to be deployed. They are going to advance. They are going to cover the few kilometers that separate us from the front in order to support the infantry, in order to push back the Russians. It's thanks to this that the Russians today are almost blocked, and that this front line around Pokrovsk, it is stopped due to the presence and efficiency of the 155th Brigade, because they have a lot of good equipment. The Caesar, the MX, the VAB, and the Leopard tanks. We'll examine in detail what they've already changed. The first evolution you can see is obviously this protection against first-person view kamikaze drones, if possibly. We still get in first-person view a kamikaze drone or an anti-tank missile. There are these reactive bricks. That is to say that it will counter-explode in the other direction, so that it will not simply be an armor that absorbs the shock. We are really going to have the possibility to counter-explode, and therefore it offers a protection that will be more interesting. However, the presentation we saw on the Leclerc tank is different from what we see now. They don't have the grates that allow the missiles to break down before they hit the impact. Here, it's really the reactive bricks. What they also say a lot is the very high survivability of the supplied tanks by Ukraine's allies. Western tanks compared to what the Russians are enduring, or Soviet tanks, obviously. That is, when you look at the losses and compare the destructions, losses of Western tanks compared to the destructions on the losses of Russian and Soviet tanks. Obviously, you have an explosion and destruction rate with the death of the crews, which is infinitely higher, while on these standard tanks as much. The survival rate is high because it won't explode, and there are many cases of damaged vehicles. But the crews that are going to get out, one of the reasons for this efficiency is precisely that everyone has their exit. There is an exit at the front under the cannon for the pilot. Then here you have the spots for the operators. So on the left, here we have the cannon operator. That is to say, he is positioned here. He has all the ammunition around him. You can see he will place them in the cannon here. And on the right, we have two people. We have in front here, all the way back. We have the one who will ensure the guidance with the aiming systems. And we have here above the tank commander, who often has his head. Whoever excels in this way will be able to lead, manage the arriado, and coordinate the various crews. Here we have returned to the front of the cannon, and just here you have the pilot, all the necessary equipment for piloting the machine. When we look at the optics, there are two of them. The optic is used by the shooter, the one who will manage the correction, navigation and correction of the shots. And above you have 360-degree vision, but let me tell you that on modern versions at 360 degrees, you don't see much. That's why I believe a lot in what I saw once in Jitimus, in which on an old one, really it was I think a BMP-1, they had put some kind of webcams all around, so really cheap stuff, and inside they had a software, and it was a test they were conducting, and you had someone who had a virtual reality mask, except he could see 360 degrees around him, with, in addition, an artificial intelligence system to automatically recognize what he was supposed to see around him. So really it was... I think here we can clearly see that the optics, logically, even if we have a vision, a 360-degree panoramic, the fact of adding this type of anti-drone protection means that they have lost their relevance. They only look in the axis. In terms of training, all these people were trained in Poland. They say the training was really great. They have real coordination too with the standards learned by Ukrainians trained in France. So it's really a completely relevant complementarity. Between the Leopard 2A4 tank, there is an even more powerful A6. Infrared versions aim further, adding another variation, which is also used but not in this brigade. With the Caesar cannon, with the jamming systems, with the drones they have now received in sufficient quantity, with the deployment of troops that is done with the VABs, they are really happy with the equipment and the training they have received. It's nice to see the 155th Brigade, which has been heavily criticized. Seeing this as propaganda is evident. I also remember our interview with the commander here. So it's interesting to see the reality on the ground, which is very far from what we had seen and from the propaganda, and unfortunately which we had also partly bought into. The advantage is a 4.72 inches cannon, but this is not a Russian system. In other words, he will be competent. Engagement distances are 2-2.49 miles with the cannon's servo mechanism linked to the optics, ensuring high accuracy on target. With the Russians, there is no servo mechanism. The Russian range is limited to 1.86 miles. Here, shots at 2.49 miles are certain, and they can shoot up to 3.1 miles in direct fire with a flat trajectory and interesting efficiency. But 4 kilometers there they are sure, and in artillery mode they can go up to 7 kilometers by shooting a little higher to go further. So we are really on an efficiency that is formidable, and when they are engaged on the front, obviously they lose some. The Russians have Lancers and kamikaze drones. For now they haven't lost in tank battles, they lost them against Lancers, well, against large Russian kamikaze drones, but not in tank battles. And the other advantage, obviously, is that he can shoot while moving at the same time. While everything that exists in front, they have to stop, stabilize, target, shoot. During these few seconds at a standstill, the Leopard will win the battles. Then, the small downside is that this is the German version, this is the same tank, but supplied by the Spaniards, and well, the Spaniards, they didn't do the job right. The Spaniards, they provided tanks that required revision and repair, rendering them non-operational, with spare parts that for some dated back to the 80s and broke down after 3 uses. So, support providing equipment, but providing equipment that works, that's another level. It must be admitted that the Germans seem more serious than the Spaniards. There, of course, these are the pots that in France we call Gallic pots. This is for emitting smoke, to be able to protect oneself, to avoid being targeted by, for example, anti-tank missiles thanks to a cloud of smoke that will be created. The brigade is expecting to receive 31 Leopard 2 tanks so far. They have received 19 and are anticipating more to complete their organization. Small local offensives and not just manage the defense. And out of the 19 they received, there are 2 that are broken. They need to be repaired, and therefore they need to be sent back to the rear, or they have to wait for the spare parts that are going to arrive. So they have 17 operational to hold this area of the front here. They tell me they are used about once a week. That is to say, even if the Russians attack every day, the vast majority of assaults are stopped. Before engaging tanks, as first-person view drones can easily destroy them. And the normal firing rate here, hold on, is 6 shots per minute, 1 shot every 10 seconds. Between reloading, decision-making, calibration, the next shot, so these are records. There is no cannon in front that can have an equivalent, so fewer Leopard tanks yield more results than more Russian tanks in front. Another nice little feature here is the engine outputs, so they're nothing in particular. However, over there they have filters against chemical warfare. Because as the Russians use some banned chemical compounds, especially large amounts of mercaptan, especially some compounds that are used in the composition of sarin gas. That, I refer you to the video I made in the Ukrainian Forensic Chemical Center. Well, here inside, they're also protected against this type of threats. Friends, I hope you enjoyed this video. In any case, they are doing a good job here. They are waiting for the next assault that they would not have been able to stop in front to be able to come and support the buddies on the front line. We continue our tour in Ukraine. Peace, love, and great amen.